The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast. It's March Madness. We'll talk about the brackets, NFL moves, some Major League Baseball, and, of course, NASCAR, recapping the great race in Bristol, looking ahead to fantasy racing at COTA. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove Podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up in me?
Welcome into an all-new edition of the Sports Stove Podcast presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. Now is the time to join the flavor revolution, and you can do it at righteousfelon.com. Use the code STOVE15, STOVE15. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Vince Stover, joined as I am every Wednesday by my dad, Dale Stover. Dad, how you doing?
Doing good, boy. Great time for sports with the madness starting here and everything. And, just a whole lot of things going on. It seems like in almost every sport. So a lot to keep up with. And it's, very fun time. But, these next couple of weeks with March Madness is always one of my favorites. So.
Yeah, it is. We had I had 4 fantasy baseball drafts, 2 on Sunday, 2 on Tuesday. Helped somebody else with another one. I was basically doing 3 at one time, and it was incredibly hard to do. But baseball season actually kicked off yesterday morning. Yeah, this morning.
Yeah.
I don't even know what day it is. So that's finally rolling. Of course, the major starts off next week, but nonetheless, baseball is rolling. NBA's coming down to the playoffs. NHL's winding down as well. NFL draft is in full blow right now with trades, free agency, and speculation. And then throw on top of that what I like to call the cherry on top is the NCAA March Madness and the brackets. I mean, we start games tomorrow. It doesn't feel like we're there, but we start games tomorrow. And it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I've got a bracket in at work. We've got a bracket here for the family as well. So we got that going on. And then also tonight is the start of the women's NIT tournament, which EKU is in. And so they're playing tonight. I'll be following that as well. And they're currently tied 48-48 with 1:45 to go in the third quarter, playing Purdue Fort Wayne in the women's NIT. So lots of stuff going on. We're going to start off with the bracket, though, and look at college basketball tournament that's starting up again tomorrow. And of course, it'll be all basketball all weekend, watching everything that goes on. So let's get started, Dad. And what we're going to do is we're going to look in the East first, the UConn segment. And look through this bracket. I want to start off talking about games that excite you in the first round of the East bracket.
Well, of course, a game I'd be interested in would be the Illinois game because I follow Illinois, being I grew up in the state there, and everything. There's potential. Maybe for some big upsets. I don't know that I've picked a whole lot of them. But as far as first round games, probably the teams that are closer ranked, should be the better games. But again, I think everything's pretty wide open this year. And I think that could definitely be true in this bracket. Like I said, I've picked a few upsets, but some that I haven't, a team like Iowa State and South Dakota State. I mean, that's just classic setup for an interesting game. And so, we'll see how things go there.
Morehead State is really, really good this year, Dad. I'm not sure. Illinois won't take them lightly, I don't think. There's been enough big upsets the last several years, dating back to Virginia losing as a 1 seed, then Purdue losing. There's been enough big upsets that these teams do not take lightly round one. But Morehead State is a real threat there against Illinois. And Illinois is good. They won the Big Ten, but definitely a threat there. Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of upsets in round one on the East bracket. I don't know. I always like to look at that 8-9. That's not an upset, of course. But FAU and Northwestern, which direction are you going at the 8-9 game?
Yeah, I would pick FAU in that one. I mean, I've followed them just a little bit, this year, and at least kept up with, they were doing real good there at the start of the year. So I think they'll hold on. But like I said, yeah, an 8-9 game, those actually could go either way.
Yeah, I like just the higher seeds in this bracket. San Diego State, they've got veteran presence there. Auburn over Yale. BYU to me is just the pick. Illinois, I've got them over Morehead, although I think it could be a fun game. Washington State looks like a really fun team, Dad. So usually get to that 7-10 game. It's kind of easy to pick the 10 sometimes. But I like Washington State there as well. I like the favorites in the East bracket to start us off in round one. And we'll come back. We'll look at our final four. Well, let's talk through this bracket a little bit, I guess.
Well, I have a few upsets there. I have UAB again. I've followed them a little bit because they used to be in the conference with one of the teams I follow. They can play pretty well. Duquesne, I watched them a little bit in their tournament game. Has a good team will be against BYU. And Drake has had a really, really good season. So I don't know much about Washington State. Maybe they'll handle it. I do know if Drake was to win, then the next game with them and Iowa State would be a very interesting game, both being from the state of Iowa from there. And, so we will see. For the fun of it, like I said, I did pick Drake, Duquesne, and UAB as far as underdogs, but we'll see.
Big upset in the East, Dad. I'm curious to see kind of which way you lean, not necessarily in the first round. For instance, for me, I don't have any major upsets, but I've got Washington State advancing to the Sweet 16 and beating Iowa State in round number 2. Do you have any of those lower seed teams going further into the tournament?
No, like I said, the teams in the Sweet 16, I would have all the favored teams there: Connecticut, Auburn, Illinois, and Iowa State. Even though I think Auburn's a team that can be upset, but they can play very good at times too. So
okay, let's drop down to the West bracket. North Carolina, the 1 seed there. To me, this has the most opportunity for a team to make a run, a lower seed team to make a run. But I don't know. I think this is a really tough bracket. You look at that again. I judge a lot of the brackets by the 8-9 seeds. You have sitting there, Mississippi State and Michigan State. Neither one had great years, of course, but I wouldn't be surprised to see either of them make a run at the same time. For me, I went ahead and went with Grand Canyon over St. Mary's. That's my big upset in the West. Grand Canyon's on a run right now. Solid program, and so is St. Mary's, of course, as well. But I don't know. I'm taking a shot. They've got Grand Canyon's got a kid, Tyon Grant Foster, who's putting up a ton of points. He's aggressive on the boards too. I just kind of like what Grand Canyon did this year, and like I said, he got a little bit of a swagger to him as well. So that's kind of my upset in the West bracket in round number 1. Looking through real quick to see it. The story, Dad, with Long Beach State is phenomenal. The head coach gets fired. They're going to let him finish out the year. He goes on and wins the conference tournament, makes the NCAA tournament. He walks up to the podium for media availability today, and he says, I don't have to answer any questions I don't want to answer because I'm not getting paid for this. So he's having a good time with it. The Long Beach State kids are playing for him. They are a 15 seed playing against a really good Arizona. I don't have them beating Arizona, but it's a fun story, needless to say. And then our buddy Nate Oates in there at number 4. I say our buddy. I've never talked to Nate, but know his dad, and I've tried to get him on the show, and Alabama refuses to let him come on. I almost had him on the show, and he's like, wait a second, I should probably ask the university, and the university said no. So that being said, still, I like to cheer for Nate Oates, even though he is at Alabama. All right, so first round in the West, any intriguing games or upsets there?
The only upset I have is not, a big upset because it's 8-9. Again, I'm kind of partial to the Big Ten, so I picked Michigan State over Mississippi State there, but I wouldn't feel super strongly about that. As far as other good games in the first one, I had everyone coming through. I don't know much about New Mexico. Clemson, might be vulnerable there. But outside of Michigan State, I picked the ranked teams.
We think that about New Mexico and Clemson because when we think of Clemson, we don't think basketball. And it's just odd to see them, unless you watched ACC and you watched Clemson play. New Mexico actually sounds like a better basketball school than Clemson. And I think we lean that direction sometimes. I did not pick New Mexico, but for me, anytime I see Clemson in basketball, I'm kind of like, they can't be any good. They're a football school. But needless to say, do you have any teams making a run, say to the Sweet 16, that'd be unexpected?
The team I have in the Sweet 16 there, which I guess would be a surprise, would be Baylor. I've kind of got Baylor coming all the way through there, being able to beat Arizona. So that's kind of what I've looked at there. So,
yeah, well, that would be the Sweet 16 matchup. Baylor and Arizona.
Yeah, Baylor and Arizona, but I had Baylor moving on even after that. So, but I think Baylor could be a little bit of an issue in this. So,
yeah, I've got all chalk in the Sweet 16 for this bracket, 1 through 4. I feel pretty comfortable about that. We'll come back to our Final Four, by the way, in a moment. If you're listening and wondering why aren't they talking about that, we're going to get there in just a minute. Let's jump over to the South bracket. This is a bracket where I just see opportunity for a lot of teams, Dad. If you're Houston, you're feeling pretty good that you got the 1 seed in this bracket. If you're Marquette, you're feeling pretty good that you got the 2 seed in this bracket. If you're Kentucky, you're feeling ecstatic that you're the 3 seed in this bracket. It just feels like this is the bracket that anybody, top 5 seeds especially, could make a run to the Final Four and it wouldn't shock anybody. I mean, if Houston loses, no one's going to be shocked. If Kentucky wins, no one's going to be shocked. It's that kind of mindset. Wisconsin, Duke, Kentucky, Marquette. I mean, any of these teams can get there, and none of it would be a shocker if they did. And none of it would be a shocker if none of them made it because everyone expects Houston to fall. Everyone expects Kentucky to lose. People don't respect Marquette the same way they used to. Duke is not the team that they have been in the past. Wisconsin is kind of around, but again, you don't necessarily expect them to get there. That being said, Dad, I do have an upset in this game. I've got Florida losing in round number 1, whether it's Boise or Colorado. I don't think it matters. I've got Florida going down here in round number 1. Outside of that, again, I'm pretty much all chalk the rest of the way. I do have A&M beating Nebraska, but again, I don't consider a 9 seed an upset over an 8 seed. And I'm really looking forward to Kentucky in this. I'm looking forward to seeing how Houston, Kentucky, Marquette, Wisconsin, Duke, how they play. Because, again, they're not as strong as they've been, although Kentucky has the roster to be great. They haven't played great every single game. Houston, the games they've lost have been ugly losses. So, that being said, I think this is going to be one of the more fun brackets, but it's definitely, I think, the most open bracket as well. Upset-wise, you got any upsets in round 1 of this bracket?
Well, I had 2. One, I agree with you about Florida getting upset. I think whoever wins just down the road here tonight where they're playing this game, I think can beat Florida because I think Florida kind of overachieved to get where they're at. And another team that's kind of on a roll in this bracket, there are several teams that got on a roll here in the conference tournament. And NC State would be one of those. So I kind of picked them over Texas Tech, even though Texas Tech could be good. Another team, they're favored, but Wisconsin have really struggled this year and then all of a sudden got on a roll in the conference tournament too. So there's several teams in this bracket. Nebraska, I think when they were in the finals also, so or close to it. And, so be interesting there with teams that are playing well at the end.
Do you think going to the Florida game, do you think that having Boise State and Colorado, whoever wins that game, they have a little bit of an advantage because they haven't had they're kind of in rhythm, I guess? Do you think that matters in that game? Because like in the other game, Grambling and Montana State, they're the 16 seed, so that momentum doesn't really matter as much. But a 10 seed versus 7 seed, having played a game recently, maybe being in rhythm, does that play a factor into you picking them over Florida or not?
Honestly, not really. I mean, it could help, no doubt about that. I just think Florida is the kind of team, I don't think they're that solid. And I think, again, the thing about they will have momentum coming into it with the win, no doubt about it. And being a 10 seed, they're not that far behind. So I think they have a good shot, whoever does win that game tonight. And of course, Colorado plays some good teams during the year. So
Yeah. I think too, Florida had the injury, the guy that broke his leg this past weekend in the SEC tournament as well. So they're not going to be at full strength. You have the emotion of that. To me, they lost the SEC championship. I don't know. I'm kind of just down on Florida, I guess. But like I said, I mean, you get down to the Sweet 16. I've got the expected teams there. I do have Wisconsin beating Duke in the second round. But outside of that, and listen, James Madison is good. So if they beat Wisconsin, that will not be a surprise. I just felt like everyone was picking James Madison instead of Wisconsin, and I just don't think that's wise. Definitely possible. I just don't think it's super wise. So, anyways, do you have any team advancing far that's a lower seed?
No, I've got the ranked teams. Again, I agree with you about Wisconsin. From there. But otherwise, I would have the regular teams going on through there, I believe. So it'd be Kentucky, Marquette, Wisconsin, and Houston.
Okay. Down to the Midwest, the Purdue bracket. If Purdue loses in the round one, Dad, I'm going to quit podcasting. I just don't think that's going to happen again this year. But needless to say, I do have some upsets in this Midwest bracket. I've got McNeese beating Gonzaga. I have Colorado State beating Texas as well. Those are the only upsets I have in round number one. But I think this is going to be – I think we're going to see some really good games out of this bracket. I think I really like Creighton, but I think the Oregon-South Carolina game could be really good. I think Texas-Colorado State could be really good. I'm interested to see how Akron comes out against Creighton. I don't anticipate it being super close, but Akron's kind of an annoying team this year. And then Kansas, Dad, I always just root against Kansas. So I'm hoping Samford makes a run, but I did pick Kansas to beat them. Any upsets in round one in the Midwest bracket?
Let's see. I would have TCU, which is not a big upset. Again, it's an 8 and 9 from there. And I think that was the only other. Oh, I have Colorado State over Texas.
Okay.
Also, Colorado State looked good last night, like I said, here in Dayton, and I think that could be good. I agree with you. South Carolina, Oregon could be a really good game. That one could go either way. Oregon's been playing well as of late, and I picked Gonzaga, but boy, it'd be neat to see McNeese State, make the upset there, and that's the kind of team that could. So it just depends how these ranked teams are how focused they come in and are ready to play. Because whenever you get the lower ranked teams, they're excited to be there and they're ready to go. So a team can't look past them, but I don't know that Gonzaga would. So
yeah, McNeese State is a team that I really hope gets the brakes beat off of them. Now, I did pick them to win, but Will Wade's their coach. And you talk about horrible human beings. Will Wade falls into that category. So he's done a great job coaching. He's just a cheater and a scumbag. So I don't want McNeese to win, but I did pick him to win that game. This bracket, Dad, is I've got Creighton and Kansas in the Elite Eight in this bracket, and that pains me because I really don't like Kansas. But I like those two teams. Purdue is so beatable. Tennessee is beatable. So I went with Creighton and Kansas to kind of shake things up in this bracket. I don't know. Do you have any surprise teams advancing any length in this bracket?
I like Creighton, so I have them moving on to the Sweet 16 there. Hopefully, Tennessee will rebound here and play well, and I think they could make a run. They're in a good spot to do that. Purdue, people say, well, they can be beat or whatever, but they're a very good team.
Yeah.
So I think they could be hard to handle. And I have Gonzaga over Kansas because I have Gonzaga winning. So
Okay.
We'll see from there. Again, not a big Kansas fan, and Kansas has definitely proved they can be beaten this year. So,
yeah. Well, everybody has, honestly. All right, let's go to the Final Four then, Dad. Who do you have as your Final Four teams?
I've got Illinois again because I like them. Illinois, Baylor, Houston, and Purdue.
Interesting. Okay, I go UConn, Arizona, and then Houston, Creighton, and I just now realized the Final Four is in Arizona. I've got UConn beating Arizona, but I imagine the fan base for Arizona would show up very nicely in Glendale if they make it that far, and it would basically be a road game for UConn. They would travel pretty far for that one. But I've got UConn and Houston in the championship, Dad, with UConn taking the whole thing. It's not super common for the number one seed overall to be there as the champion when it's all said and done, especially as of late. I just think UConn's the best team in the country, and I think they have the best chance to get there. So I go UConn over Houston. How do you see the championship game breaking down?
Again, at this point I picked Purdue. I don't know that I feel super strong about that, but I think again they have the talent to do it. So I had Purdue over Illinois. Again, I like Illinois, but the advantage they have is they're very deep. They play a lot of players. They have a lot of veteran players, and you'd like to hope that could make a difference in the tournament here as far as a team that could make a run. And they've played well here in the Big Ten at the end of the year. So we'll see. Again, they may go out quick from there. We haven't talked much since the bracket came out, and don't want to take a lot of time with this, but were you surprised at all with and it's always weird how they seed people, the number one seeds. I was a little surprised about both Houston and North Carolina being number one seeds. But did that surprise you at all, or are you fine with that?
I was not surprised that Houston being a number one seed. I mean, they were the number one team in the nation for a while. They were always up there in the top four, even in losing in their tournament. To me, it wasn't the end of the world. So I don't have any problem. I don't have any problem with that. When you look at Houston, I mean, they're 30-4. Same record as Purdue. Well, one win more than Purdue. They're one of the top four teams in the nation. So I think that's right. North Carolina, I wouldn't say surprised is the word, but I mean, you're looking at North Carolina, Iowa State. Those are kind of the two teams really that you're looking at. Tennessee, but with Tennessee hurt themselves. They weren't going to make Auburn. Auburn's not even close to a one seed. So Marquette, I guess, would have been the other one. I don't know, Dad. I don't know who else you can argue, avidly for to be the one seed over North Carolina.
What about Arizona?
Yeah, Arizona, but Arizona only has 25 wins. Houston has 30, Purdue has 29, Iowa State has 27, North Carolina has 27. So Arizona's only got 25 wins. That's not going to do it at the end of the day.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think it was horrible, but when, these teams were getting beat in the conference tournament, I know that makes it rough on the people doing the selection stuff because, waiting till that happens, they already have a lot of things in place. Yeah. So, but that's very interesting. So,
yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, listen, it's always going to be fun no matter who's there and where they're seated. I don't really have a dog in the race this year. I mean, Kentucky, I guess, but I haven't really followed Kentucky. Reed Shepherd is phenomenal. Dylan Shaw is really, really good. I just anticipate disappointment. so, so there it is. But like I said, this is the easiest bracket Kentucky has been in a long time. It's not easy. No bracket's easy. But getting Oakland in round 1 shouldn't be a problem. Looking at facing up against Texas Tech or NC State in round 2, they're better than both of those teams. Then you see them matching up with Marquette there in the Sweet 16. And I just – there's an opportunity. I try not to be too optimistic, though, this time of year. Anyways, so there you go. Our Final Fours, our championship predictions. And I've got UConn Dad with Purdue overall. So we'll see how it shakes down when it's all said and done. And looking forward as this tomorrow we start getting the fun of March Madness. Well, some people tonight, I don't consider the play-ins as March Madness. So we'll see. We'll see tomorrow as everything kicks in from there.
If you lived here in the Dayton area, you would. It's a big deal and always has been. So
I think it's fun.
And they do a good job with it. So
yeah, I think it's fun, and I don't have a problem with it. I just don't get excited about it. I don't pick the first 4 winners. I just pick the rest of the 64 as the way that I do things at the very least. All right, Dad, anything else with March Madness before we transition into something else?
No, just a shout out. We won't say a lot about the girls tournament right now, but a shout out to Middle Tennessee State. They went undefeated in the conference and won the conference tournament. And they're in an interesting bracket there too. They play Louisville first, who they defeated last year, have not played them this year. And then if they were to win that, they're in the bracket in Baton Rouge with LSU. So that would be exciting too. But they've got a good team, and I've had a chance to watch some of the tournament, their tournament games. And so, a shout out to them to get in the tournament again, and we'll see if they can make any noise.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right, let's transition over to football, Dad. Since the last time we had a show, Aaron Donald retires. I want to start with that. The Rams defensive tackle, one of the greatest to ever play the game, one of the most dominant to ever play the game, announces his retirement. He has mentioned this before. It looked like before it was contract negotiation more so than actual retirement. This time he actually does it and retires. And I'm intrigued your thoughts when you heard about Aaron Donald.
He's a great player, like you said. He'll go down. I think as you look at his career, there's been a lot of great defensive linemen. And, when you're as old as I am, you remember some great names from way back in the past. But Aaron Donald was just very dominant, could control a game himself. And I think, the Rams were a little bit surprising last year. And I know he didn't have as good a year, but I think losing Aaron Donald, boy, you just don't replace that right away. He's been a good player. I think he's been good for the NFL, I think, for the most part. And definitely a very dominant defensive guy. He was a guy that you knew could, wreck the game pretty much by himself.
I saw a lot of comparisons to Reggie White with Aaron Donald, just how he was able to just dominate grown men. I saw Reggie White, of course, too, but you probably saw more of him than I did. Well, you did. So, I don't know. How do you like that comparison?
Yeah, I think they played, a little bit different. Aaron Donald was a little more inside, but again, he could move around and play anywhere. And Reggie White, they could move him anywhere on the line and he could dominate it. That's a good comparison because they both were people who just could dominate people physically. Throw them out of the way and change the game. And to be mentioned, with Reggie White, is a very special thing. But I think Aaron Donald, Aaron Donald will definitely be a Hall of Famer. And I think as you look back, you start talking, top dozen, whatever, defensive linemen someday. I think Aaron Donald will be a name people will mention.
Other movement, again, last week we talked about Russell Wilson and Kenny Pickett. Would there be a legit battle? How does that play out? Then, of course, as it always does, after you do a show, Kenny Pickett gets traded to Philadelphia, and Justin Fields lands in Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh has announced that Russell Wilson's the starter. Justin Fields is going to be the backup. But I've listened to a lot of guys and who specifically say, listen, yeah, they're going to say that now. But at the end of the day, if Russ struggles, Fields is the guy. So Russ is going to get the first chance at it, but it's always a competition. We can talk about that. That's fine. But I want to talk about Justin Fields because, Dad, I think this is a great situation for Pittsburgh. I think it's worth giving Russell Wilson another try. Plus, they really don't even have to pay the guy. So that's cheap. They get Justin Fields for a 6th-round pick. Now, it can turn into a 4th. Either way, I think it's a steal because I think Justin Fields is the long-term answer in Pittsburgh. Do you like what Pittsburgh has done with bringing both Russ and Justin Fields in? And how do you think it's all going to shake down this year and in the years to come?
Well, it'll be interesting. I think it is a good thing probably for Pittsburgh. I think it's going to be a very rough situation for both players. I think either Russell Wilson, Pittsburgh would be a great spot for him. I think Justin Fields, Pittsburgh would be a great spot for him. But to me, it's going to be a tough situation. Either you got Justin Fields, as a backup. Again, they haven't paid a lot for him there. Russell Wilson, my thinking was this would be great for Pittsburgh. He'll come in. He's a veteran. He's a guy that'll get respect of the team. He'll rally the troops, and Pittsburgh can have a good year. So, okay, he's going to rally the troops, and they're going to have a great year, but he's on a 1-year contract, and is he going to feel like, hey, I can take this team, I can help turn it around, and I'm going to be here for 3 or 4 years, and I'll have a chance to finish my career? If that's true, then Justin Fields is sitting there saying, what am I doing here? And of course, they may be able to trade Justin Fields, but again, I mean, him coming in for a 6th-round pick, maybe a 4th-round pick. It seems like an awkward position for both players. Now, like you said, if what they're saying isn't really true and they battle for the starting job and Fields looks good or Russell Wilson has a problem, that's the thing. I've heard people say, well, Russell Wilson, or this would be great for Justin Fields. He can sit and learn, okay? So, okay, what's he going to sit and learn here? He's learning from a quarterback that's had 2 miserable years. It's not quite the same. I think Russell Wilson's got some left in the tank, and I think he could turn things around in Pittsburgh, but it just seems like, I don't know how. I know the coach of Pittsburgh has a great relationship with players and is able to really motivate players. So if anybody can handle this, maybe he can, but I just don't know how you motivate both players when both wants the same opportunity. Justin Fields doesn't want to set for 2 or 3 more years. He's already had a couple of years on his career there. And so we will, it just seems, I think either one of them by themselves, I'd say Pittsburgh's a great spot. Together, I just don't know for sure how this is going to work.
The only way this is bad is if they have bad years. If Russell Wilson does good and holds the spot and Steelers are in the playoffs because of Russell Wilson, well, obviously that's good for Russell Wilson. And for Justin Fields, he got to be in a stable environment, rebuild his confidence, and have the Chicago Bears stank washed off of him for next year when other teams can go out and try to get him. If Russell Wilson struggles, well, obviously it's probably the end of his career. Justin Fields steps in and plays well, then Justin Fields is going to get a long-term deal with Pittsburgh and again be in a stable environment. If they both have bad years, that's where it's negative, and that's where it hurts everybody involved. I think it's going to be fine. It may only be fine for one of them versus both of them, but I think it's going to be fine. I think Russ has a chance to come. I don't think he's going to be a top 3 quarterback, but I think he has a chance to come in and be what Pittsburgh needs: stability and play solid football. Don't turn the ball over. And I think Fields is going to have a chance to have some stability for probably the first time in his NFL career, because who did he learn from in Chicago? I mean, my goodness. At least in Pittsburgh, he has an environment that should be more stable. Like you said, Tomlin is a good coach, first of all, and he has a good repertoire with the players also. And I think sitting, practicing, being in the film room with Russell Wilson is a good thing for Justin Fields, whether Russell Wilson plays well or not. Who would you rather have, Dad? Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields, or Russell Wilson?
I think Justin Wilson, or I mean Justin Fields.
I was gonna say you can't combine them. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
a little bit of both of them there. So I think Justin Fields could be with the team and be the starter this year, given the right coach and the right situation. I think he has the ability. He's gotten experience as a starter. Chicago was just a mess for him in a lot of ways. I don't know that it's tainted the ability a lot. Is he going to be a passer that he needs to be accurate? We'll see. That would be the thing. I do think Russell Wilson could still play, but again, I don't think you have a lot of years left on that.
Yeah, I agree. I like Justin Fields better than all those guys. Kenny Pickett going to Philadelphia, Dad. How do you like that? Him being the backup for Jalen Hurts. I think it puts Philadelphia in a really nice spot, because I don't love Kenny Pickett as a starter, but I really, really like him as a backup.
Yeah, when Pittsburgh drafted him, I didn't quite understand that. As far as I didn't think he was a starter. I knew he was from University of Pittsburgh, and maybe that made some sense. Could he ever be a starter? Maybe he can be. But definitely, I think Philadelphia is probably a good spot for him. A good team. Again, a stable team. I don't think his style is probably the same as Jalen Hurts there, but I think it'll give him a chance to stabilize some. And the best thing for him was to get out of Pittsburgh. You didn't want to be there with everything in this situation. So
yeah, Pickett is not crazily dissimilar from Jalen Hurts. They are obviously not exactly the same by any stretch, but Pickett's a very athletic quarterback, and he famously had the fake slide. He's an athlete, and I think he fits in well. And just like Mac Jones, I like him as a backup a whole lot. It gives me a lot of confidence where if my guy goes down, I've got a guy who can step in that has some experience and can play some football. And maybe I don't want him for 16, 17 games, but if I got to have him for 2 or 3 games, I like having Kenny Pickett, Mac Jones, especially Justin Fields. I like those kind of guys being my backups. And how much of this is because of what happened with the Jets? I keep coming back to this. The Jets lose Aaron Rodgers 2-3 plays into the season, and they've got nobody to back him up. And now you're seeing the Eagles go out and get a guy with experience. The Jaguars go out and get a guy with experience. The Jets go out and get a guy with experience. Pittsburgh gets a guy with experience. It's like these backup quarterbacks now are becoming almost as important as a starting running back to make sure you have a guy that can be there and fill that role.
Yeah, definitely the Jets prove that you need a backup quarterback, no doubt about that. I think the quarterback is such a position that anytime you're going to lose your main starter, it's going to maybe be a tough situation. But if it's a deal where you're going to have him to fill in for a game or two, then yes, I think that's really good. Just like Cincinnati, when they lost Burrow, well, they weren't going to go to the Super Bowl again last year. So, but again, you want people to come in and Cincinnati stay competitive. So,
yeah. Minnesota makes a trade to get another pick in the first round. I believe they're at 11-23 right now. Everyone is saying they're trading into the top 5 to go get a quarterback. Most people are saying J.J. McCarthy. They bring in Sam Darnold as the replacement for Kirk Cousins. if you can put aside your Packer bias for a minute, what do you think Minnesota should do this year? Should they move up to get J.J. McCarthy or another quarterback in the top 5? Should they try to get into the top 3 and get a top guy, or should they hang out at 11 and see what falls to them?
I think they definitely ought to move up. I think that makes sense, probably why they made the trade they did to get another pick in the first round. I think even though you don't ever really know quite what Minnesota is thinking and what they're going to do, I think move up and get a quarterback and move up as far as you can, depending on, how they have them ranked. If they have 4 or 5 guys they like, then I think that's good. Hopefully teams will learn from the last couple of years, because you've had teams that have, we traded up and this is the guy we want, and that just didn't work out at all. Trey Lawrence and things like that. So
Trey Lance.
So you have to know, you have to be confident. I don't know that you can just go up and say, we'll take one of these quarterbacks. I think you have to have 1 or 2 of them that you say this would fit us and our system. And then you need to look at what do we have to do to get them to get to that spot. And again, I haven't looked at the draft a lot. There are going to be several teams, I think, in the market for quarterbacks. And this is supposed to be a good year for quarterbacks. So, it could be interesting chess match moving around. But again, is everybody going to rank them all the same after the first guy? Probably not. But again, we've seen that, with Lawrence, with Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, we've seen people move up, and this is our guy. And it not only was that not their guy, it just didn't last very long. So,
well, even last year with Carolina, they traded up to the 1. They should have taken C.J. Stroud. They didn't, and they're kicking themselves for it. And they're still trying to make that work, of course, and they still may make it work. I don't see why. Well, it goes back to where do they have them graded at? To me, you don't have to go up to the top 5. You got 11 and 23. To me, it makes sense. Why don't you wait? Why not take a quarterback this year? Give Sam Darnold a year, and maybe next year you're picking higher. You don't have to trade capital to get up and get a top-tier quarterback. Is J.J. McCarthy better than the number 1 guy next year? Is, where do you have Bo Nix and Michael Penix graded out? I'm shocked that we're hearing about J.J. McCarthy going in the top 5, because I don't think he belongs in the top 5. But we'll start doing some player rankings and draft stuff. Hopefully next week is the plan for that. Any other major NFL things you want to talk about before we move on?
No, like I said, a lot of things have happened. A lot of people have signed. A lot of people, seems like maybe more free agency and moved around than has in the past. So it'll be interesting once we get, for long will be to, workouts and then training camp, and teams are going to look a lot different, but we'll just see, we'll see how it works. So, and again, several new coaches this year. So just be new looks in a lot of conferences and a lot of things there.
Yes, indeed. Baseball started this morning out in Korea. The Dodgers and the Padres. Dodgers take game 1 5-2. Still, it just seems weird having a regular season baseball game and it not barely being celebrated as opening day. So we'll wait to celebrate opening day in America, but baseball's here, and excited about that. Like I said, fantasy baseball up and rolling every Sunday night at 8 p.m. You can tune into the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. We'll get you ready this week. We'll talk about guys we missed on in drafts, and looking ahead to some waiver wire guys to go ahead and flag and keep an eye on throughout the season as well. Dad, let's go into our final segment of the night. You're going to stick around with us for this one, and it's a segment we call the Sports Stove Final Lap. Sports Stove Final Lap is presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. Time to join the flavor revolution. and you can do it at righteousfelon.com. Use the code STOVE15. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. Bristol is one of my favorite racetracks, Dad. I still am a little bitter because many moons ago, Dad, you had tickets to Bristol that you turned down because you couldn't go and you didn't feel like it was right for you to pass the tickets off to someone else. And that someone else should have been me. But you didn't. You declined those tickets, so you owe me a race at Bristol at some point. It was a phenomenal race, a lot of fun. I listened to the first half of it on the radio, where actually me and you met up on Sunday afternoon, exchanging children. You were dropping off my kids, I was picking up my kids, and so we listened to the first half of the race on the radio, watched the second half of the race, and it was an absolute blast. Everyone's talked about it all week, all the other podcasts and things like that, with the the tire wear and the strategy that came into place because of it. I had a lot of fun watching it, and I thought it was a fun race as well. I know you didn't see all of it, Dad, but your thoughts just generally on Bristol this past weekend.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I've enjoyed, watching NASCAR so far. I've watched a little bit, of all the races there. And the Bristol, I didn't remember a lot about it. I knew it was a short track, and I knew normally there was a lot of bumping and banging and stuff. But I was thinking as we were picking to see people and everything that, it's a short track and it'd be hard for cars to move up and catch up and move around. And boy, that wasn't true at all. I was very surprised as I watched with that. Somebody thought, oh no, they've dropped back. And then next thing you know, a few laps later, they didn't have any trouble coming up through the crowd. Now, as it got down near the end, then it was a little harder to move around. You had everybody, blocking everybody and at that point, but I was surprised at the cars, moving around again, it was a lot of things interesting about it. I know I've listened to your show and guys you've had on, it's been very good. I know a lot of talk about the manufacturers. If I remember right, it looks like Toyota had a good day. Ford won the race, but the Toyotas really looked good and the Chevrolets didn't finish as high this time. But again, it may be, with a short track or whatever from there. But, it was a lot of fun to watch. And part of it was because, rather than, like I said, I went into it thinking, okay, the 3 or 4 cars are at the front. That's going to be the ones that are going to do it. But there was a lot of cars were able to keep coming back up from the back and, getting in the race and some of the guys that have started out hot this season, they were that way at Bristol too. So even on the short track. So it's going to be an interesting year because it looks like there's some guys that have surfaced here that are going to be factors in like maybe most of the races.
Yeah. So Toyota won the race. Joe Gibbs Racing, Denny Hamlin wins the race. They were up there running 1, 2, 3, 4 there for a little bit, it seemed like, as well. Ford ran well. Chevy, again, 2 races in a row now. Chevy's not really looked great. They didn't finish horribly, but didn't look great either. Josh Berry had a run there. He got the fresh tires, and I mean, he was splitting guys, just flying past guys like you were talking about. As soon as they got those new tires, man, they could just move. Anybody on older tires did struggle. The tire story was fun, and I've enjoyed listening to the professionals talk about it throughout this week. They had a lot of fun as well, and it was to me it was the most fun I've had watching a race this year. A whole lot of fun there. This weekend we transitioned to the Circuit of the Americas, COTA, down there in Texas. First street race of the year, or road course race of the year. And this one, Dan, and I was talking on the phone earlier today with you, I don't feel like this is a road course that is leans towards the road course drivers quite as hard as the other road courses do. And I don't have any great statistics to back that up or anything. But I feel like there's still have the potential for anybody to win here at Circuit of the Americas. Tyler Reddick won last year. And so I expect him to do well. Chevy, has struggled some the last couple of weeks, but I think they'll have a decent showing. They just have those drivers, the Daniel Suarez and the Shane Van Gisbergen and the Kyle Larsons of the world. So I expect them to run well in COTA, and I expect Toyota. I expect all the manufacturers actually to kind of maybe be a little bit more spread out this race, more so than what we've seen the last couple races, with Toyota kind of being the head dog and Ford coming up in second. Dad, you've been doing fantasy racing with us this year, and I'm curious, have you thought ahead to this week and the kind of drivers that you're looking at for your fantasy lineup?
Well, I looked at it a little bit today just to see. And again, like I told you, I kind of like to wait till after qualifying, but I have tried to look because I know there are different people on a road course and different people have done well. So, I'll continue to do a little research as we go along and just see, but probably I'll use some drivers I haven't used before. But again, a lot of it's always good for me to look at qualifying and at least see the people that look like, they're up there near the front, and then of course pick a couple people that aren't, because you never know. So,
yeah, I always go after qualifying and make adjustments as needed. This week, I'm going to go with some guys that I've used. I've only used once actually this year. These guys: Tyler Reddick, who won last year; Kyle Larson, who's probably the most talented driver out there, I think, right now. And then I'm going to throw Chris Buescher in there, the Ford, as well. He has some good experience at COTA. Then you're going to see some other guys. I got 3 guys that I haven't used yet this year. Daniel Suarez, I'll plug in here. Of course, he won in Atlanta, but he's known for his road course driving more so. Michael McDowell, who has had a really good start to the year. I've not used him yet either. So I'm going to put him in my lineup. And then in the garage, I'll take the long shot. I'm going to put in Shane Van Gisbergen, who won at Chicago last year. He's running only, I think, 10 races this year in the Cup Series, but comes over with all kinds of road course experience. So I've got him in my garage that I can move in. The other interesting guy that's just up for this race, he'll be around for a few races this year, in driving for Toyota this year, is Kamui Kobayashi. I was going to put him in, Dad, but I just felt like, you know what? I haven't seen him at all. So I trust SVG a little bit more. I'll put him in the garage, and we'll see how some things shake out. But I really like McDowell this week. I really like Reddick, and I really like Larson. Suarez, Buescher, and SVG are the guys that I'll kind of wait and see how qualifying goes, and see if I need to make some adjustments there as well. So I'm looking forward to it. To me, COTA isn't a great race to watch always. Chicago was a lot of fun last year, so maybe the road courses are growing on me a little bit. But we'll see how this one shakes down. I've really enjoyed being back into NASCAR, watching and enjoying just the things that are going on this year. Has been fun, especially with the variety that we've seen there as well. Dad, any closing thoughts on NASCAR for the week?
No, I would. This fantasy league that you have us in is really good, and to me, that really helps you keep up with drivers and more what's going on. So I would encourage people who watch our podcast, if you have casual interest in NASCAR and say, I just don't know that much about all the drivers and I can keep up with that, think about getting in this fantasy league, because again, it has a lot of helps. It's easy to use, and it really does keep you up. It makes watching the races more exciting, just like fantasy does, and watching any of the games. So it helps you. It helps you pay attention a little more to that. And I've enjoyed it, and I would encourage people maybe to give it a try.
Yeah, and you can join the league. You'll be in a little late, so you'll be working from behind, but you just go to NASCAR.com, click on Fantasy Live, and search for the Sports Stove 500. That's the name of the league, and you can get in. Chris Prince is currently leading the league. He was on the show a couple of weeks ago. We'll have him on again. Dad is second right now as well. I'm sitting nicely at fourth, and our friend sitting at third has finished third. I think every single week this season he has been third place, and he holds third place in the league right now too. He makes a comment on Twitter after every race. I'm in third again, so there you go. But it's a pretty tight league right now. Actually, my son just joined this week. He'll enter for the first time this week as well. So join us over there, the Sports Stove 500 on NASCAR.com, Fantasy Live. All right, that's going to be it for today. We will be back Sunday for the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. The plan is to be back Monday with the Sports Stove Local Hour and Wednesday here at the Sports Stove Podcast covering, we'll look at some NFL draft stuff. Major League Baseball will be in swing as well. So we'll be talking about those things. And, of course, March Madness as it continues to climb through. Follow us on social media at Sports Stove on Twitter and Instagram. Check out righteousfelon.com to pick you up some jerky. Use the code STOVE15. Good luck to your brackets. Good luck to your baseball teams. And curse the Cubs. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's edition of the Sports Stove Podcast. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.